Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Back to Basics. Once again, I continue to be Pastor Don. I know you think I change it, but hey, I still am that which I am. Oh, wait, no, that's the big guy. And joining me, as usual, is the lovely, the wonderful, the angelic Courtney Fraley.
I thought you knew me. Hello.
So today we are going to start leaning into Genesis 4. And what we're going to do here, it's a short chapter, but we're actually going to split it up because it's got two really distinct stories in here. The first one, which we're going to cover today, is the story of the first murder, Cain and Abel. And the second one is kind of the introduction to how that goes out into civilization. So why don't we get started with Genesis chapter 4? Our first chunk, the murdering of Cain and Abel, runs from verse 1 to verse 16. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. Shall we begin?
Yeah, might as well.
All right. I think I will keep with the tradition and I will read again. We're starting now from 4 verse 1. Cain murders Abel. Now the man knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have produced a man with the help of the Lord. Next she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a tiller of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel, for his part, brought of the firstlings of his flock, their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. The Lord said to Cain, Why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is lurking at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it. Cain said to his brother Abel, Let us go out into the field. And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, Where is your brother Abel? He said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And the Lord said, What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it will no longer yield to you its strength. You will be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, My punishment is greater than I can bear. Today you have driven me away from the soil, and I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and anyone who meets me may kill me. Then the Lord said to him, Not so. Whoever kills Cain will suffer a sevenfold vengeance. And the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who came upon him would kill him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. So, a lot going on here, eh?
Yeah, I always wondered why the flesh offering was considered worthy and the plant offering wasn't.
That one I honestly don't have an answer for. I don't know that there is a specific answer for that. And in fact, I have often wondered if it wasn't entirely arbitrary. And if there wasn't some other factors
If you'll forgive the verbiage, just God being a dick for no reason, or
well, I don't know, God being a dick for no reason.
I know there's the joke that Old Testament God is kind of a dick and New Testament God is a lot gentler, but
well, there's something to be said for that. But also, that's a reflection of the people who were writing it at the time too. But also with this case here too, like I have always looked at this and generally understood that what's going on with Cain and Abel in the offering here, like it's couched as if they're competing for God's favor here, and that God is like got some objective criteria by which God is determining which one's better and which one's not. But I've been a parent for a decade now, and like when my kids come up and tell me, hey, which one of our two things that we made is better, sometimes, I don't know if this is good parenting or not, sometimes I will pick one entirely arbitrarily based on which one's being a dick and which one's not, so that the other one might learn a lesson. And so in looking at this, obviously the one person whose motivations and internal monologue we're never going to get is actually God. Because you don't know ever what God is thinking. That's kind of the whole point of the deal. So in this case, I always have read this as, what God is doing here has less to do with which offering he preferred and more about what God was trying to do between Cain and Abel to maybe teach them a lesson. Sounds to me an awful lot like Cain had some rage problems, and that God might have been trying to spin up a teachable moment that definitely went a bit farther than it ought to have. That's my assumption here, but there isn't like a definitive answer on that. Like why this offering and why not the other?
It seems like such an integral part to the story, though. At least to me, I'm on this because this has bothered me ever since I was a kid. When I realized we were going to be dealing with this, I was like, "Oh yeah, that part."
Yeah. Part of it has to do, I think part of it has to do with like cultural predispositions of the time, where like shepherds and flock managers and whatnot were seen, particularly in the early nomadic cultures. Like a shepherd was much more high status than someone who tilled the ground. Because we're talking early days of human agriculture, probably the story itself predating the motion of humans from nomadic to agriculturally rooted. So it's quite possible, and I think a likely anthropological assumption, that this is rooted in the cultural belief that field tillers are dirty and shepherds are there where the meat's at. That's my presumption there, but I don't believe that
would make sense.
Yeah, I don't believe there's a theological reason, at least not one that I'm aware
of. Okay.
But the way that rolls forward, though, man, Cain definitely takes that. Cain takes that hard.
It escalated rather quickly.
Yes, that escalated quickly.
As the old meme says, yeah.
So the old memes, the deep dark memes. But by the way, as an inset here, I'm going to jump ahead for a second to verse 15 actually, because and I know there's bound to be somebody who's going to read this passage and think this, but no, the mark of Cain doesn't mean black people. That has been a huge thread in white supremacist theology for a long time, that the mark of Cain is where black people come from. That one drives me nuts. But yeah, there is a huge chunk of white supremacist, anti-Zionist, whatever have you, all of these different extremist chunks of Christian theology that hold that that's what that's about. And I'm just going to go ahead and drop that right here. That is 100% not what that is about.
Putting aside entirely the massive fact that is the biggest reach.
Yeah.
Verse 16 says, Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden.
Yeah.
Eden is supposed to be like between the Tigris and Euphrates, right?
Right.
Africa's not east of there.
True, but India is. So, take it what you will. And they had more interactions with people in that area than otherwise. But also, if we're talking about debunking extremist, fundamentalist, and white supremacist theologies, I also found it kind of a hilarious assumption to make too, because even if you buy that assumption, the whole purpose of the Mark of Cain is to say, don't screw with these people, they've suffered enough. That's the whole point of the mark. So it's one of those theological assumptions where if you buy into it, you're ridiculous, but also if you buy into it, you're automatically wrong by your own logic too.
I could see more. I mean, I still don't think this is accurate, but I could see more if it was okay, people with freckles or people with moles or whatever. That's an entire skin tone is not a mark that.
Yeah. Also, I think it's a small point, given that when the story was originally developed, circulated, and written down, people didn't understand how genetics work. But there's no mention here that the mark of Cain passed from Cain to his children. It's pretty much just a Cain thing. So there's this assumption in fundamentalist theological circles that this is an inherited trait, but I have yet to see any particular evidence to that effect. But yeah,
that seems like the kind of thing that the Bible would have taken a verse to mention in the and the mark was passed on to his children and his children's children or something like that.
You'd think so. And I'll be honest, I may be a pastor, but I don't have the whole Bible memorized. I may be missing something that we'll stumble across in a chapter or two, and I'll think, oh, yeah, well, I guess that's a thing. But to the best of my knowledge right now, because of all of the stuff I don't have memorized, I don't think that's a thing. So, there's that, but, I've jumped ahead, but there's also a lot more else in this passage to talk about.
Yeah, let's see here.
My favorite is that line, am I my brother's keeper? Like, we see that one tossed around so much these days, as if the answer to am I my brother's keeper is no, of course you're not, but like, whatever, dude. But the theological answer, am I my brother's keeper, is absolutely yes, you are. Like, that's the whole point of what God's saying here too, is yeah, you kind of are. You're each other's keeper. That's how human works.
What else have we got to unpack here?
Oh, I'm sure we've got a few. Oh, I like verse 14. I like comparing verse 13 and verse 14. Sorry, verse 12 and verse 14. Because verse 12 is what God says. When you till the ground, it will no longer yield to you its strength. You will be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Skip ahead to 14 and you get Cain doing his thing. Today you've driven me away from the soil, and I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and anyone who meets me may kill me.
Yeah, kind of continuing on with your what you said about Eve's comments about the tree.
Yeah.
And we've always got to add our own what's it's to everything. We've got to embellish everything.
You can see that Cain is most definitely his mother's son. But also, like, this is a human tendency, but also like an immature human tendency, if you will. I'm noticing this I have a preteen in my house, and I'm noticing this in that child of mine right now. Is you say one thing and all of a sudden, whoosh, it's blown up to the most depressive, self-sabotaging, victimizing thing ever. Like, I can't tell you how many times a day I hear, why does everybody hate me so much? Kid, I just asked you to eat a piece of broccoli. But that must mean you hate me. No, let's talk about that. But that move to emotional self-exaggeration, that's such a human thing.
Sorry, people driving by, like, outside.
I got a window open on the street. I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anything else we see here?
Again, with the kind of continuing vibes of the chapter, you've got the the Lord said to Cain, where is your brother Abel? Where the parental sort of thing, where like God's coming in this human sort of a sense, like, hey, you want to tell me what you did, or do I have to tell you what you did?
Yeah. And if you take a synthesized view of these stories where you assume that both writers, because remember what I talked about was an episode or 2 episodes ago, we're dealing with 2 writers here.
Yeah.
If we take a view that they're both writing different perspectives on the same God, then absolutely. But you can also tell which writer's going at it here too. This is the one who's taking the anthropomorphized God, who's wandering around, doesn't know where everything is. Hey, what's up? Where's the other little guy? Thought there were a couple of you all running around here. Which doesn't really track for an omniscient deity, but like, I like your take on it, that he's doing the parental thing here. Like, all right, where's your brother? Come on.
Who chewed these crayons?
Yeah.
Was it you?
No, it was the dog. We don't have a dog. I haven't invented those yet. All right. And then anything else, or did you have something there?
I think that's about all. Oh no, there was something right at the beginning. It just seemed like an oddly specific statement. Now the man knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have produced a man with the help of the Lord.
Yeah. So
It just seems like, I guess, what is the emphasis supposed to be there? Is it supposed to be on like the God helped it be male? Is it supposed to be on like, even though we were created to procreate, this wouldn't have happened without God? Like, what is the emphasis meant to be there?
So different translations take this in different ways, and I anticipated that either new or produced was going to get us some sort of question here. So I kind of went ahead, did a little opening up on my iPad here of the Hebrew text to take a very brief look. I know not everybody watching wants to do a deep dive into Hebrew specifics, but this one is, I think, at least reasonably important. The King James, by the way, gives you a very different take on this and says, Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. So like that translation right there, like looking at
that seems very different. Yeah,
it is. What I was talking about this actually in our early morning Japan time Friday or Wednesday Bible study. That one of the first steps I do when I'm really deep diving into a text is I start comparing some of the English translations to see where some of these weird directions might popping up, like, wow, that word is radically different between a couple of these translations. And so the word we're looking at here is quantity. So I'm going to open this up here and we'll see what the dictionary says about that. To get, acquire, or obtain. Literally one of the secondary definitions is of Eve acquiring. It can also be caused to possess. So it is more passive there. It's called perfect. So that means, okay, so we're definitely in get, acquire, or obtain.
Is it sort of just like a, by the grace of God, it's a boy?
Yeah, I mean, that's the general intent behind the
Like, is it just not that deep?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's the Bible. Everything's going to be at least a little bit deep. In this case, I think what we're dealing with is the intentional awkwardness of the phrasing has to do with the fact that it is the first time a new life has happened. Like, look, I got another human. That's a thing. Like, the knowledge of the birth cycle and stuff like that is still relatively new here, at least within the narrative terms. We'll talk about this in the next episode. That might not.
Well, and even when you're prepared for it and know what happens, I can say from experience, holding a new person does give you an effect.
Yeah, and if you were holding the first new person, and this whole process was not a thing that like was known or understood, and like you're like, oh, wow, I have now arrived at the place where I have a small human in my arms, and my sex ed and pregnancy training was worse than rural Alabama. So, I mean, this is, wow. Like, there's a lack of knowledge in where Eve is right now that makes that phrasing important, and that carries over to some of the awkward phrasing in the English as well, to kind of suggest like, I got a human from God, I got a man. And you'll notice too, she says man. And we look at, ish. It's just the word ish. It's just man. It's not like boy child or any variation from that. Just ish el, a man, or a man from God. So I got a man from God. Like the distinguishing between adult and child.
Man as an adult male, or like man as in an individual human.
The distinction isn't really made in Hebrew so well. The distinction is made in Hebrew later on between like man and boy. But man as a general for humanity, it can go either way, but it's not used as a singular general term that way, I don't think, in Hebrew. So it is noteworthy, I think, that she's saying, I got me a man. And it's not meant to be creepy. It's meant to be in the fact that, like, remember, in the last chapter, like one of the last lines of our previous chapter was, oh, by the way, I should probably name this woman because like I've named everything else. And so now there's a new thing and they don't have words to describe it yet. They don't have an ability to say, well, oh, this was a boy as I expected. It's a small child. Like none of those terms or concepts existed yet. It's like, oh,
Tiny man.
like I remember what those parts are. Like he's got that's a man. Yeah. So that stuff all comes later, but you know, those are deliberate choices to express that that kind of newness. The best example I can give of this is I'm going to do a wonderful little deep cut here. I was listening to a podcast the other day on the Star Trek Voyager episode Worst Case Scenario, which is an episode that takes place
One per episode.
I know there's always got to be one, but it's an episode that takes place in like the 3rd or 4th season, I think. But they shot it very specifically to make it look like it was taking place way back in the 1st season. And it was all subtle camera tricks and stuff like that. It was nothing that you could immediately point to and articulate, like that character's there and they shouldn't be, that person's talking this way, that person's like, you know, missing things that have changed. Nothing like that. It was just slight camera angle changes, minor dialogue shifts, things like that. That gave a very subconscious impression that they were in a different time period in the show's history. And that's exactly what they're doing with the word choice here in Genesis 4, is they're giving those subtle changes that suggest the timing of this particular episode.
Okay.
And yes, I did make an obscure Star Trek reference and make it work as a theological explanation.
I know. It's your true passion.
I know.
All right. So have we completely dissected this
I think we have done as much as we can for this passage today. So I am going to thank anyone who has stuck around for our dissection of this. Next week, we are going to look at the beginnings of civilization. Boom, 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 boom. Genesis chapter 4, verses 17 on up to the end, which is 20.
Yeah.
So we're going to look at the continuing lineage of Adam and Eve via Cain. Going to get a little bit of an intro to the begats. So that's going to be super exciting because we all know that's the part of the Bible that everyone really gets worked up about. Like, yes, I can't wait for the begats. So that's going to be a thing. But we are going to talk about there's some interesting stuff in there yet. I think we're going to be able to dig into. So, all right, everybody, thank you for sticking around. You know, do the button smashing and the liking and the subscribing and all the other YouTubey stuff. If you're on the podcast channel, do the subscribing thing on wherever you're getting. Send us comments down below. Send us email messages, skywriters. You know, whatever you feel like doing to talk about how awesome you think we are or not. You know, I'm not you.
Send a link to your friends. Send this video to somebody that you think will like it. Or
yeah, circulation, man. That's the thing
it.
with it. It's like, you know, we can talk about like and subscribing till the day's over, but like the more this gets shared around, the easier it becomes for us to make these. So if this is something you really like, pass it around, man. I would.
Well, not only that, but I think it's kind of the point of why we're doing this. I mean, this isn't like some vanity project. It's we're trying to, you know, make the religion as a whole like more accessible to people and
exactly
more honest with itself and the people in it.
Agreed. That's the goal. So, you know, the short answer is that in order to tackle that very large and very difficult topic, share this video. In the meantime, all the links and various things to our church and everything else are down below. Otherwise, I will see you guys next week for the beginnings of civilization. Bye, everybody.
Peace out.